Hey everyone, welcome back to Mystic Mooncraft. This is Anna, and today we're going to be talking about a really interesting. If you found the title of this video interesting, then I invite you to stay around. If not, then no harm, no foul. What I'm getting ready to talk about is absolutely not for everyone, and I have a lot of notes because I want to make sure that you guys understand what this is about. At first glance, you're like, yeah, maybe not. Blood magic, okay? Yeah, it sounds wicked. It sounds whatever. And forgive the fingernails, by the way. I tried to help dye my kid's hair purple for Samhain, and for whatever reason, the semi-permanent not permanent dye, permanently dyed certain parts of my fingernails. I don't know. I want you to understand that throughout human history, few substances have held such a powerful place in pagan magic or in spiritual practice as blood. From ancient Mesopotamian temples to Norse bloods, Aztec ceremonies, and even modern witchcraft, blood work is something that has served as like the ultimate offering because it represents life force, right? A bridge between the physical and the spiritual realms. We'll talk about other things as well if this is not your jam. I understand. But I do want to tell you that I have found a way for this to be not. I know a lot of you are like, oh my god, I can't stand the sight of blood. Okay, there are ways to help with this, and I want to be clear from the start. This is an educational exploration into the historical and contemporary practices of blood crafting. Educational. This does not mean that I am suggesting that you do this. It is entirely up to you if you want to do further research. If this is something that you feel comfortable looking more into. All right, let's discuss the traditions respectfully and in an educational way. So, historical foundations. Let's talk about blood magic as we first understand it as a symbol. Virtually every culture, okay, has used in ritual bloodletting ceremonies representing life force. The Romans called it vis vitalis. Chinese traditional medicine calls it qi. For God's sake, we used to, back in the time before science was modernized, do bloodlettings and leeches. One of the US presidents, and I forget which one, actually died from having his humors balanced by bloodletting and leeches. So it's always been seen as integral. I mean, obviously, we think now, like, duh. But back then, it was seen as this mystical magical, if we just remove the bad blood, and in certain cases we do still have to do that with dialysis. If we just remove the bad blood and we leave the good blood in, but how do you know what is bad and what is good back in, say, the 1800s or something like that? We didn't. In 7500 BC, we have archaeological evidence in Turkey, which shows ritualistic practices involving blood offerings. So we knew at some point, 7500 BCE, that is BCE before Christ existed. Okay, so we were doing this long before the Bible was ever written, long before it was ever thought of, long before it was ever conceived of. Ancient Sumerians literally call it Demu, which means the red life. Small offerings of blood. All right. Yeah. We have 1750 BC. Celtic traditions in pre-Christian Europe. Blood held particular significance in seasonal rituals and oaths. The Irish word fola connects to concepts of both blood and kinship. So lineage, all right? By my blood I call forth the ancestors. By my blood I call forth whatever. Celtic druids, Pliny's the Elder's natural history used ritualistic bloodletting in their sacred groves, particularly during the harvesting of mistletoe. We now use that as something that you kiss under during Christmas time. Interesting how a lot of these origins were shifted over time, and that has to do with Constantine and wanting to wipe out any native religions and converting to Christianity, but that's a topic for another time. Slavic folk magic maintained blood rituals well into the medieval period. Russian folklore speaks of the domovoi. Household spirits could be appeased with drops of blood mixed into bread offerings. Obviously, these would be specifically made. I do want to go ahead and right now, before we go any further, say that this is not something that everyone should partake in. If you have certain conditions, such as hemophilia, if you know that you have hepatitis of any sort, if you know that you have a blood-borne illness, is it responsible of you to practice any of these bloodletting rituals or engage in this kind of as a responsible human? It is not. Unless you live by yourself, and even then, if you never have guests over, because blood carries so many different types of pathogens, you just don't want this. If you know that you are a high-risk individual, living with a high-risk individual, or if this is something that is not comfortable for you to do, this is certainly not for you. Also, I am not in any way advocating for, as a survivor of someone who, or as a survivor of self-harm when I was much younger, this is not something that I am advocating you to do in a grotesque, harmful manner to yourself. I will explain that there is a very easy sanitary way to accomplish this if you are interested. This goes into Native American traditions, right? Deep respect surrounding the Native American peoples. All indigenous tribes that do still exist, who do still practice their native religion that has not been contaminated by Christianity, by opinions of others, hold in very high regard, especially tribes such as Native Americans who had to fight for that right to keep their own polytheistic religion, polytheistic faith system in a world where it was considered convert or die. We take a look at some of the churches here in the USA, the United States, bordering Canada and into Canada, where mass graves of indigenous children have been found because they would not give up their religion. So they're native. Yeah. So much respect for anything. Be very, very careful when appropriating any type of even Palo Santo, white sage. There are alternatives that you can use. Make sure that you are sourcing from retailers who ethically source. Okay, I will say that. Again, I have worked with Rachel, who is a shamanistic practitioner. My grandfather, who was my adopted grandfather, was a part of the Alabama Coshada tribe. Now, the designation was not kept as it passed through the family. My mother is not designated as a tribal member. My adoptive sister, her biological daughter, is not registered as under the tribal nations. The blood in these contexts was seen as magical in the Western sense, but are not as magical. But as a sacred gift, the ultimate sacrifice one could make for their people. The Cherokee concept of Adawai, medicine people, included practitioners who understood blood as one of the sacred elements connecting all of life. Whenever you look at the web of life, and even I can draw comparisons to in Germany, rote Faden. The red thread that connects us all. It's the thread of fate. But why is it the color red? It's to do with the life force that flows through each and every one of us, regardless of race, religion, color, creed. It does not matter. We all share the same life force, the same key, all right? And that's what we talk about earlier in Chinese medicine. In Australia, the Aboriginal, again, very, very closed practice space. If you did not know, the Aborigines, the Aboriginal persons, what we know commonly as Ayers Rock is actually Uluru, and that is something that is very sacred, and they've closed off parts of that as a sacred monument, very similar to areas probably where you live all over the world, where you have sacred sites. Stonehenge, for one, Machu Picchu. These very religious significant sites are being preserved, and I do greatly appreciate that. African traditional practices, all right? Deities and divine connections, all right? So many European deities specifically associated with blood offerings, Odin, okay? The Norse god Odin, the Allfather, the Morgan, the triple goddess of war and fate, all right? The Roman god Mars, Middle Eastern and Mediterranean deities, Cybele. All right, see, I'm not familiar with some of these. Her priests, the Gali, would engage in ritual bloodletting as part of their devotional practice. I'm not saying that, okay. The Greek tradition, Hecate, the goddess Hecate, right? Also, of the guardian of the crossroads and magic, the mother of magic, as she is known. Again, very similar to the Morgan with the triple moon symbolism connecting. And this was interesting for me to find, but I'll get there in just a second. Very connected to the moon, the goddesses, and that is having to do also with blood. Men, if you're squeamish about this, go ahead and close your ears. But our menses is 28 days, which is a lunar cycle, right? Okay. Sometimes we will, and I have actually TMI for some of you. Sorry. But will sync with the moon cycles. Okay, it means that you are in tune with the cycles of the moon. Anyhow, so life force and vitality, it represents essence of life itself. It's also a binding tool. So I will say, and I'll get into that here in just a minute, sacrifice and commitment, the act of offering one's blood in ritual isn't just about substance, it's about the sacrifice involved. Again, we're not talking full-on sacrifice, and I'm going to get into that. You're thinking, like, what am I supposed to sacrifice? Sacrifice what? This sounds a little freaky. Okay. Okay, Connection and binding. Blood creates connections. In many traditions, sharing blood creates bonds that transcends the physical world. So whenever I talk about, yes, using blood to call in your spirit ancestors, the ancestors of old, the ancestors that you have never known, the ancestors who still exist in that liminal space, who have not yet transitioned into another form, who have not yet decided to be reborn, rebirthed, or have not gone through the flames of purification. Well, that's a whole nother subject again. There's so much to cover whenever it comes to occultism and eclecticism that you just don't even scratch the surface in some of these videos. In contemporary witchcraft, all right, it has experienced a revival, and I have used it ever since I began practicing the craft. But it is not without controversy, all right? Again, I spoke a little bit about this. If you know that there are certain risks involved, and there are risks always involved with some of these practices involving blood, then do not partake, okay? It's just not a good idea. Any discussion of blood magic has to address safety. Has to. Modern practitioners emphasize sterilization techniques, right? Never sharing blood. Okay, it's just like sharing a needle. Never share blood with others. Ever. All right. For so many different reasons. Ethical consideration includes consent, cultural appropriation, and the psychological impact of blood magic. Some people may feel like you are taking their life force. I once had a teacher who would not allow his picture to be taken because he believed that it would trap his soul in the film. I don't necessarily believe that, but I will say that we talk about tags in witchcraft, and blood is a very, very potent tag to have for an individual. A lot can be done with that. Up to and including hexing, curses, love magic, which I would not recommend for a multitude of reasons. There are other ways, better ways, without those karmic ramifications that we can discuss and cover. Protection would be one of the only things that I would ask anyone in my home for their blood protection, all right? And that would be something that they would do themselves. You can substitute, all right? So red wine, pomegranate juice, red ochre, candle wax, red candle wax can also be used in spells where blood is traditionally called for. I find that it's just not as powerful. So I will share with you what I do. There are, and you can buy these on Amazon, if you have a family member, if you've ever been to the hospital, if you have diabetes yourself, then you know that there are these very, very small, what are called finger prick devices, right? And you can get these, at the pharmacy, you can get these anywhere. If you are wanting to engage in this practice, then very thoroughly clean your hands. You do not want dirty hands here. Sanitize with an alcohol wipe, the same way that you would in any kind of medical setting. Then a very small prick. You will get several drops of blood, perhaps, all right, squeezing the finger. You can put those on petitions. Be careful, because once you do bind something with blood, it is bound in blood, which means that you are saying, I am absolutely 110% sure about this, because I know that I cannot, or it will be very difficult for me to break this spell. I'm committed to this in blood. That's why you hear of petitions written in blood back in the Middle Ages, whenever I want to call it like the first satanic panic broke out. the first witch trials in Europe, and people were, oh my God, she signed the devil's book with her own blood. Is it possible for you to write with blood? Not really. Use a red pen. I'm just telling you. Because whenever blood dries, guess what? It's gonna be brown. Not only that, but it's not going to be reliable. It's probably going to dry up by the time that you get that, or get to writing anything. If you need to or desire to sanctify or use blood on anything, do so judiciously. Like I said, on a piece of paper. You can say on a talisman or something like that you are putting on your altar. Right? Don't let anybody come and lick it. All right? Keep your altar space. In general, keep your altar space closed, guys. Or keep it out of reach. In a room where no one goes. All right? And then after you have gotten the few drops of blood that are needed or desired, then clean. Very, very much a proponent of cleaning, and then put a Band-Aid on it, just like they do at the hospital, just a Band-Aid, okay? Put a little bacitracin on it, or a little bit of, what is that, that helps the wound heal, and it's not even a wound, it's just a tiny pinprick. Do not take a sewing needle, heat it up to cleanse it, or soak it in alcohol and try and, no. I remember whenever that was like a thing in high school, and I was like, also, do not attempt to, unless you are a phlebotomist, unless you are a hematologist, unless you are someone who works with blood and knows how to deal with drawing your own blood, do not attempt to draw your own blood. All right. And by the way, if you go in for blood work and you ask to keep one of those little vials, you cannot. And they will probably look at you really, really funny, like they did me. Long time ago. True story. But no, you cannot keep that. If you want to preserve any small amount of blood. Okay. Let's give you this. Let's give a hypothetical scenario. All right, you're in the kitchen. You cut yourself, and you're saying, this is a perfect example. I am going to collect. Okay, I scrape my knee. I get an injury, a nosebleed, whatever. You can put a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in the bottom of a jar that has a screw top lid. Okay, not anything with a cork. It will ultimately end up evaporating. You'll be left with dry blood. But a small amount of isopropyl alcohol on the very, very bottom will help it from coagulating, as long as you continually shake it. Again, not necessarily recommended, but if you happen to have the opportunity, my nose bleeds during the winter time, okay? I'm just putting that out there. If you happen to have the opportunity to, and you want to collect your own blood, again, store it in a place where no one can get to it. Do not put it in the refrigerator. Do not put it at the room temperature. Is fine. I'm not recommending that you do this, because the last thing that I want is for someone to find it and to pour it out, or to think that it is something that it is not and use it. Don't, for God's sake, do not, but just be common sense. And I know common sense is a flower that does not grow in everyone's garden, but do not put this in the refrigerator for somebody to drink. Do not put this in where you keep your cooking spices. Keep everything separate. Okay? Separate. Completely separate. And if you know that you have a transmittable disease that is transmittable through blood, do not engage in any of these practices at all. Not only is that a violation of health and safety rules, but it is also irresponsible on your part to potentially, in the wildest scenario, expose someone to something that you might have. It's just like in the early days of 2020, whenever things were very, very, you would not knowingly go into a populated place, and there were people who did, and they were arrested. You would not go into a populated place and you would not cough all over everyone. You would not sneeze all over everyone. Same rules apply here. Okay? You have a social contract that says, I will not do anything that knowingly harms or could potentially harm anyone else. Keep that in mind. And by the way, if you do, it's only going to come back on you. So I definitely would not do that. Have I covered everything as far as that's concerned? And don't be surprised, by the way, if you are able to if you have a wound or anything like that, don't be surprised if the blood changes colors. If it's the easiest freaking thing to do, honestly, is just get you some of these damn things and use them as needed. Once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever. It's just a couple of drops of blood. Dab, dab. Okay, these are single use, so once and then dab, 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 dab. That's it. It's the intent behind it, all right? And I'm not suggesting that you do this all the time. This is only for very specific workings. If you wish to make an offering to your deity, then by all means, make sure that this is something that they would appreciate. There are some that will not appreciate that. Let's talk about something else while we're on the subject. Period blood, okay? Women out there, there are things that you can use to collect. Yes, collect your own menses. Am I recommending that you use this? No, I am not. Can you? Yes, we all have free will. Again, not if you knowingly have a bloodborne disease or illness. Am I going to suggest that you put this anywhere near your property? Anywhere near it's not going to be a pleasant odor. All right? Okay. If you do wish to give attribution, then do it in a place far, far away. Hopefully you live on a lot of land or something like that. I know that there are extenuating circumstances, all right? Some of us live on hundreds of acres, and you can do this. It's not a problem, all right? For the most part, don't. Just saying. If there are any questions, if I missed anything, please don't hesitate to ask me in the comments below, and I will answer you. All right. Even in the subliminal grimoire, I answer or at least interact with every single one of your comments. All right, guys. Protection magic. Yeah. All right. So yeah, historically, this has been done as protection spells across many, many different cultures. I'm not gonna say all cultures. Placing a small amount of the practitioner's blood on doorways, windows, or protective amulets. Again, I do that with some of mine. This does not apply under the aforementioned exceptions. You don't have to go that far, all right? There are other protection rituals that we can get into. Binding and oath magic. Again, if you are petitioning one of your deities, then you may sign a petition or an oath to work with that deity, to receive their blessings in exchange for ... I will bring you flowers. I will give to you red wine, fruit, mead, whatever the case may be. Manifestation and personal power. Again, to charge personal spells, enhance manifestation work. Sacred space and timing. Mental and spiritual preparation. So this would be done on the new moon leading into the full moon for manifestation. If you are wanting to do any sort of hexing, any sort of baneful magic such as that, and yes, people do, and yes, it does exist. Am I suggesting that you do that? No, I'm not. Am I telling you how to do it? Yes, I am, because we all have free will. Prepare yourself mentally. Obviously, if you know that you vasovagal, which means an extreme, you hear some people fainting at the sight of blood, and that is because of a vasovagal response. And it's here in the arterial vein, or the jugular, or the carotid, where blood pressure drops at the sight of blood. My mother did this when I was during childbirth. You'll see a lot of men do this during childbirth. Yeah, it's a vasovagal response is the medical term for it, and it basically means that you lose blood pressure and you pass out. If you know that you're prone to this, don't do it. Okay. Respect living traditions. Okay. Does this align with your personal belief system? If it doesn't, don't. All right. In conclusion, blood magic endures across centuries and cultures because it speaks about something fundamental, okay, in the human experience, our relationship with life, with death, with sacrifice, and the sacred. Blood carries something essential about who we are, okay? For modern practitioners, blood magic represents one of the most serious forms of magical working. Yes, this is not to be taken lightly. That's why we're spending an enormous amount of time talking about the subject, requiring careful consideration, proper preparation, deep respect for the traditions that have preserved these practices through millennia. Do more research. Remember that magic, whether it involves blood or any other element, is ultimately about your connection to the sacred. If you don't feel like you need this extra step, don't use it. I'm covering it only because I know there are questions out there about it. Yes, it has been done. Yes, it is something that you can do. Is it something that you need to do in order to be a witch? No, it is not. Is it something that you need to do in order for your spells to work? No, it is not. Are there substitutions that you can use instead? We've already covered those. Yes, absolutely. Ultimately, it is whether we choose to work with it is literally or symbolically, it's up to the practitioner. But it is a symbol of the most sacred nature of life itself. All right. There are, I have, in a deeper study. I can link these in the description box down below, but I did just go ahead and bring them up. All right, so blood sigils and symbolic mat. So whenever you, creating sigils. So whenever you create a sigil on a piece of paper, just go ahead and anoint and charge that sigil with your blood. Lunar timing, again, during the dark moon, it's typically for banishing, protection, breaking unwanted patterns, or baneful magic. The waxing moon period, all right, is for using it for growth manifestation and drawing desired influences into one's life. Now, again, as I said, you can use this for magical workings that are in regards to love. Do I recommend that? No, I don't. For a multitude of different reasons. For one, it has a big chance of backfiring on you, especially once it wears off. This is something that's consistent that needs to be kept up. And do you really want someone to fall in love with you because you cast on them? No, you don't. Do you want someone back because you cast on them? No, you don't. All right. Ancestral blood magic. Again, if you are wanting to call in help or guidance from ancestors of old, this was particularly helpful for me, and we'll get to that. Especially this little guy up here has great significance in doing just that. To the ancestors that I have known as an adopted individual. But what I do through blood magic is to call in the ancestors that I have never met, the ancestors that may be lingering, and the wisdom that they provide. We already talked about the sacred feminine and menstrual, the menses. I'm not going to go into some of these different. I do have a lot of different rituals to cite: Scandinavian blood magic, Italian Strangheria, Germanic blood magic, right? All right. Yeah, I'll have to ask my husband about this. Algaes for protection, fehu, using the binderins, right? Psychology of blood magic. All right, from a psychological perspective, the color red, even the color, the symbology of knowing that you're putting your all intent. And again, remember, intent is the basis for most of our magical workings. So if you feel closer to your magical working by using blood, then by all means you can. In some aspects, spiritual transformation through blood work. This has been seen in many, up to and including medieval Christian mystics who practiced forms of sacred bloodletting. And the ecstatic states achieved by devotees. Now, I would garner to say that back during those times, that ecstatic or near death, whatever, was probably due to blood loss and hypoxia. Okay, so again, if you know that you have a certain medical condition like hemophilia, where the blood will not stop flowing, all right, you cannot staunch the flow of blood, do not participate in this practice. If you use a lancet that is designed to draw very small, minute amounts of blood, you're not going to risk a hypoxic trance-like state. I would never suggest that you attempt, because hypoxia literally means a lack of blood flow to the brain. You see this in stroke. You see this in certain blunt force trauma incidences where people become hypoxic. Sometimes you'll get this whenever you stand up too fast. You ever have that woo feeling? It's because you stand up too fast and your blood pressure drops, goes from your head downward. And no, I'm not talking about the theory of John Holmes and the fact that, if he were to, then he wouldn't have any blood left in his neural region. No, that's doesn't work that way. But yeah, again, protective measures, cleansing and integration. Yes, definitely. Make sure that you are practicing this, if you choose to, very, very carefully, very, very judiciously. This is not something that you want to accidentally splatter blood all over the wall and it looks like a crime scene. Okay? I had that happen once on accident. And use specialized cleaning products if you make an accident. All right, make sure that everything is properly sanitized. Oh my gosh. It can be combined with other practices as well. All right, marking your grimoire, things of that nature, your book of shadows, whatever you choose to call it. Okay, I'm gonna end with this. If you feel drawn to practicing blood magic, do so in a safe way. If you feel called doing blood magic, why? Examine why you feel that this connects you more to your practice than using a substitute. Why do you feel as if you need to do this to connect with a particular deity? If you are ever getting a spirit or a deity that is asking for blood or demanding a sacrifice of blood, really do question that. This is something that is offered. This is not something that is to be demanded. I know some of you in the comments may ask or be curious, what about animal blood? I used to work as a vet tech. Do I know how to, if I had a large breed dog, draw blood? Yes, I do. Would I ever suggest that you do that? No. Never harm another animal. Never harm animals in at all. In order to gain blood for a magical working. If it does not feel right to you on a personal level, on a moral level, on an ethical level, I know that people like to make witches out to be like, we're stealing cats on Halloween, on Samhain, or other times of the year, and holding animal sacrifices, human sacrifices, baby sacrifices, all of this weird stuff. No, it does not work that way. It does not. At least not in my experience or in my practice. Can you go to the butcher and get animal blood? Yes, you can. Some people will, whenever I lived on a farm and we slaughtered our own animals, we would use that in the compost. It is a rich mineral base. Never, ever, ever would I consider using animal blood in a ritual. I just would not. I wouldn't. And to get it from the butcher, you can. I know some of you are going to say, well, I saw him on an episode of Vampire Diaries or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or something like that. No. I definitely wouldn't, because you don't know what kind of, there are zoonotical diseases and bacterias that exist and by the way, zoonotical means that even though it exists in an animal host, it can be transferred to a human host. Heartworms is one of those, believe it or not. All right. Even whenever we're talking about mosquitoes, we have different bloodborne pathogens that can be passed. Those are zoonotical diseases, right? They come from somewhere else. They go, and one of the most recent, we know about that. That is to say, don't go to your local butcher and ask for a pint of blood, claiming that it is for your garden, and then attempt to use it in some sort of ceremonial practice. Just don't. Okay? For so many reasons, just don't. Guys, if you have any questions, I would love to know your thoughts on this, whether or not this is something that you feel comfortable doing. Again, if you do, then very, very, very simply, okay, another great alternative, tears. Okay, a bodily fluid, urine. We'll get into some of the other things that you could potentially use, but tears, okay? They are emotional. They provide your emotion within the depth of those selenic tears. So you could absolutely use those as an offering, as a way to put intention into a working. There are ways around it if you don't feel comfortable by using blood magic. Alright, guys, I hope that this has been informative. May you always search for the light, and may your path be illuminated with moonlight and magic. I look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments, letting me know what other topics you would like to explore, and what other meditative music you would like to see in the Subliminal Grimoire. That's what I have for you guys. Until next time, take care. Blessed be.